Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. Dada, with your 2026 AEW Double or Nothing instant analysis. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, just a few hours removed from the AEW Double or Nothing pay-per-view to break down everything that happened on the company's second major show of 2026. Vintage Chris Vanini will be along for the ride to break all of it down with the Silver King. But before we get to him, we need to get to this, and that is a reminder that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about Defy.
So be sure to head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating. On Apple, take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter and Blue Sky. You get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights. You can send in questions and comments for the show on YouTube. When you subscribe over there, you can listen to the show. You can watch full-length video interviews. And if you hit the Linktree link in our social media profiles, you can subscribe to our free Slack channel. You can shop in the WWE shop, earn us a little bit of commission. You can subscribe to the show. Every reason in the world to find us on social media at Getting Overcast. And I do want to mention one thing about the Slack channel before we move on with the rest of the show. I just found out that all of our channels, the individual channels within the overall Slack, a lot of them were hidden. We posted a list of all of them, but I guess over time it got archived. So I just posted a new list. So if you joined the channel and you're like, wow, no one's talking, it's because we only immediately put you into two rooms, the spoiler rooms, the WWE and AEW rooms. You need to join those individually. So if you joined our Slack and you're like, what the hell is this? And you either deleted it or you just stopped using it because you didn't think anyone was talking. That is not the case. Just go to the welcome channel, find all of our other channels, and join up and speak with everyone. So please make sure you sign up for that. And please make sure you follow us on social media at Getting Overcast. Vintage, welcome to the show. Normally, we try to tape these instant analysis late at night, immediately after, whether it's a WWE premium live event or an AEW pay-per-view. Silver King was 30 minutes behind this show, so I didn't finish until nearly 1 a.m. And at that point, to tape an hour-and-a-half show, then edit it, post it, it just didn't make any sense. That's why we're doing it Monday morning. It also happens to be a holiday here in the United States, so not the worst day to do a quick taping like this. Also, normally at this point of the show, we would crack open a cold one. Now, I technically could do that because I don't really have work today, but unless it was going to be a mimosa, I don't think it was a great idea. So, Vintage, I'm assuming you don't have anything to crack open over there either.
I do not.
All right, fair enough. Let's just move right into the AEW Double or Nothing instant analysis. For anyone who might be a first-time listener, we're going to break down every single match on the card. We go deep usually when it comes to WWE PLEs in terms of the match breakdown and stuff. With AEW, because the show is so long, because the matches are so involved, outside of like the main event or any other key match, I try to truncate it a little bit more, but we'll break down the match, give you the result, or review analysis, grades on the match, what we expect to happen moving forward in some of these AEW feuds, storylines, or with the wrestlers individually. As an overall look at AEW Double or Nothing, look, I purposefully skipped the buy-in matches. I just couldn't necessarily handle them. I caught parts of Mick Foley making his debut. He did fine as expected. He looked healthier than he has in a long time. I did take issue with Renee Paquette's announcement of him, where she referred to the fans as sickos. That to me is just cringe as hell. If the fan base wants to call itself that, cool. It's a big yikes coming from like a professional on a microphone calling people sickos that are their fans. Foley also towed the standard company line, shaded WWE a little bit while explaining his reason for joining AEW. I don't know if that's mandated in the contract or not, but everyone seems to do it. MJF low-blowed him on the pre-show because he insulted his hair. I thought that was going to factor into the main event in a negative way. Like, I didn't think it should, but I thought it was going to. It did not, so that was a huge positive. Also, I loved this venue. Louis Armstrong Stadium looked great, fit wrestling perfectly. The set was also cool, leaning into the constant scaffolding throughout New York City. Smart way to do it cheaply while being aesthetically pleasing. And I don't mean cheap as in bad. I just mean cheap as in less expensive than a ton of big screens or something like that, which they had also. They had big screens, but the scaffolding was really cool. Vintage, what did you think about all this?
Agree with you on most of it. The sickos thing, I saw that I think AEW's like selling gear with that on there too. So they're all kind of leaning into it, which is whatever. Do whatever you want. Mick Foley coming in, good to see him. Good to see him kind of have the face-to-face with MJF, because who knows? We don't know how much Mick is going to be involved, but this was a cool, fun way to kind of do it. Even if it wasn't the buy-in, I saw it after the fact on YouTube or whatever. Most notable thing to me, Mick Foley made a comment about him beating The Rock as an example of him winning matches, because MJF said Mick Foley only loses matches. And the crowd booed hard at the at the mentioning Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Which
Oh
was
no,
kind of funny to me.
I would assume they booed at him mentioning WWE. You think that was The Rock? I didn't hear that.
I took it as The Rock. Yeah, okay. That's how I took it. But who knows?
Well, at this point, the whole crowd, I mean, the whole fan base is a protest of WWE.
No, it's fine. Not, You can boo The Rock. Like, there's plenty of
no. So I'm saying it's not surprising. So I'm saying it's not surprising that they boo The Rock, right?
And then the arena looked awesome.
Yeah.
Like really, really cool for all the things you said. The acoustics looked great. It looked big. It looked different. I really, really love how week to week, oftentimes AEW just every show often looks different because they're in different kinds of arenas. Sometimes you do a residency and you're in the same place for a while, but the visuals of their weekly show and when they do pay-per-views at places like this are just so cool. It's something I wish WWE would do more. Everything WWE does, it all looks the same. I thought the arena looked awesome and terrific setup.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're not going to do that for Raw and SmackDown because they sell still 9,000 to 14,000 tickets for each of those shows. So they're not going to run, these smaller, more unique venues. There are still large seating venues that can be unique, like this one. Like WWE could run a Raw in that facility theoretically, and sell 14,000 just like they would in Barclays or Madison Square Garden. But I mean, there are so many logistical problems with this particular venue and with these tennis stadiums in New York. That's probably one of the reasons they don't do it. Also, just the prestige of being in Madison Square Garden.
I know it's easier not to do it. I just think
no. I'm just explaining like why WWE doesn't do it most of the time. But they should occasionally, especially with premium live events, find unique venues and also with NXT, which they were traveling on the road for a while and they were doing this. But find some of these unique venues and run them. Absolutely, you're 1,000% correct. It is one of the cooler things about AEW, particularly these tennis stadium shows that they do in New York. Arthur Ashe Stadium, Louis Armstrong Stadium. They're really great visually, especially Arthur Ashe when it's full, which the last couple of times it hasn't been, but it's being remodeled. And I believe that whenever they do go back there, I mean, based on how many people showed up this, show, 14,000, they probably could have sold more. They'll probably do a lot better selling Arthur Ashe Stadium next time they're over there. But the weekly TV, for me, it's hit or miss. Like 50%, the venue looks cool. The other 50%, it does look like trash. So, it just depends where they go and what show they're taping. But I do agree largely that unique venues are important, and AEW is doing that, and WWE is not. Let's get into the main card. We're going to give you a match-by-match breakdown, as I explained, and we will start with the main event, though we are not necessarily going in opposite card order. It was the AEW Championship versus MJF's Dome. Darby Allin, the champion, MJF with the full head of hair enhanced by a recent trip to Turkey. Allin started hot at the bell with a couple side headlock takeovers, a really nice callback, but then he did his kamikaze dive and landed straight on the back of his neck in a frightening spot because he legitimately could have been paralyzed if that landed an inch differently. Yeah. I'm glad he was okay and able to continue, but man, I actually had like a pit in my stomach seeing that, and I yelped out loud because I thought the match was over. Like, I thought that was it.
I was very concerned about that. I know this has been a topic of conversation on social media for a while, but suicide dives, I still don't think they're worth it because Io Sky a couple of weeks ago had a couple iffy ones. This one now, it's like, God, it's a more dangerous move than we think it is because it happens all the time.
Especially because, like, you can do a topic on Hero, you can do a splash off the top rope. Rey Mysterio does the basement slide thing. Like, there are so many other ways to do it without putting your body through those ropes where your foot can get caught or you can overshoot or undershoot just based on your speed. I mean, it's so unnecessarily risky. But I mean, you're never going to have Darby Allin stop doing that move. It's just not going to happen. MJF hit the powerbomb onto his knee. I love that move. Then a bit later, rolled outside to avoid a coffin drop. He landed the suicida later, Darby did, but he did a coffin drop off the ring post onto the ring apron as MJF avoided getting his neck snapped. That's a move I hate because it's unnecessarily bad on his back. MJF did a package pile driver onto upturned ring steps, but Darby was somehow game enough to low blow him back inside with the referee's back turned for a false finish. Darby did a scorpion deathlock. MJF somewhat avoided another coffin drop with his knees. Allen added a scorpion death drop before an extended pinning sequence started by side headlock takeovers. That was an eye roll for me. It usually is, but they ended it strong with a code red double countered until it was executed. MJF pulled the cameraman in the way of another suicida for a planned bump that looked really cool on screen. Darby predictably climbed the scaffolding. He did Cactus Jack's bang bang because now McFoley's in AEW, and he fell with a coffin drop on MJF through a table. That was surprisingly one of the, I don't want to say safer big moves in the match. Like, it looked great visually and in execution. Unfortunately, it was not without pain because Darby did completely bust open the back of his head hard way. And by the way, AEW was not allowed to do purposeful blood on the show, so you saw it minimally. And this, of course, was the big moment, and they did it in the main event. They could have been counted out like 5 times probably, but of course, referee discretion and all. Allen passed out while attempting Scorpion Deathlock, putting a devilish smile on MJF's face as he got a reprieve with an injured lower back. MJF prevented a coffin drop, hitting an avalanche tombstone pile driver and a side headlock takeover to win the title back, winning it for the 3rd time. Phenomenal match to conclude a show that was filled with top-tier wrestling. I'm not sure whether I can call it the match of the night per se. In fact, I'm not going to. But the storytelling elements here were strong, and to me, that aided what was already quality wrestling between these guys. I did enjoy that MJF used the Avalanche Tombstone and not the Heat Seeker, which could have worked similarly because it was focusing on the neck, but it would not have been as strong visually. MJF winning the title was the obvious move, not just because Darby is not a long-term champion and not just because of the way his title reign was booked with, meaningless but high-quality defenses, but also the hair stipulation, which took away any shred of doubt that they could delay it. MJF had to win the title back because he needs to take it into All In against Will Ospreay. But predictable can be good, and it was good in this case because it was not just the right decision, it was the only decision they could make. I saw people saying this was the wrong move. No, it was not. Darby had his run. He did well enough. We can argue over whether the defenses legitimized it or made it a bit silly, but he is not the type of person to take a championship into the biggest show of the year. If anything, he's someone who should have been winning the title at the biggest show of the year, like Rey Mysterio and Daniel Bryan or Kofi Kingston, not a random episode of Dynamite like he did. MJF celebrated appropriately. He stood over Darby's dead body on a gurney. That was a terrific visual for a heel against a hardworking babyface who was finally spent after a crazy month of work. So I loved the match. I thought it was executed extremely well. A couple of those, messy, ugly, unfortunate spots, whatever you want to call them. It's an A. I'm saying 4.5 stars. If you're a quarter star below, I'm with you. It's not an A+ match, not in any way for me.
I thought this was great. I think these guys have really good chemistry together. Like, for whatever reason, maybe MJF working with a bit of a smaller guy who can kind of bounce around for him makes MJF look more of a power type of guy. Mm-hmm. I thought the length was good. The action was good. They moved around a lot. And the finish was, I get it, but it didn't maybe hit exactly in the moment because we did the, headlock takedown once again.
Right.
I don't know if maybe you just pin him after the Avalanche Tombstone, whatever. I get the story and I know what they're going for, but I was ready to kind of like move on from that.
Would you have done it?
MJF?
Would you have done it in like the 69 position? Because like when you land on a tombstone, obviously it's face to crotch both ways. Would you have just had him like pull up his legs and then just get the 1, 2, 3 immediately?
I mean, he probably bounces off of him and then you just pin him normal.
Just pin him
or
normally.
whatever. But like the headlock takedown was the story for MJF losing that way. in part because of the kind of well, it started with MJF doing it and then MJF losing with it,
right?
Which was a good spot to just end it there, to let MJF get the win back again. It's like it was a little bit too much, but I'm nitpicking. It was a terrific match, great finish, the right winner. Obviously, I was surprised Darby won the first time, and I kind of questioned the decision to have him win the title because we thought, well, we want MJF to have a good long run going into All In Wembley when he will presumably fight Will Ospreay or something. Mm-hmm. But I ended up loving what they did with the Darby title run, which was, it was a short run, but he got a lot of defenses and had some memorable matches and did some good stuff. The golf match with Pac, Brody King, like, he was a fighting champion. It's the same thing I've been saying on the WWE show here a lot, which is if you have a champion and they're not like all powerful, like an Obafemi, have them defend their title and get some wins under their belt. The same way that Paige and Brie are right now. So it means something that they're the champion. Yeah. Darby is never going to be a long-term champion for AEW. I don't even know if he's still, to me, not a top guy, but you created something. People are going to remember the Darby Allin title run because it wasn't he wins the title, he loses it on his next defense, and all you wanted to do was give him a moment because of that one time. No, he got some wins out of it, and he established himself forever as a title-worthy guy in AEW, even if he's never going to be a long thing. It kind of reminded me, honestly, of Mick Foley in Mankind. He won the title on an episode of Raw, beating The Rock, and he eventually lost it back, and they went back and forth a couple of times, but Mick Foley never took the title into Mania or won the title at Mania. He just had the one WrestleMania 2000 four-way main event, but it's kind of similar in that sense of, like, he got that moment, he got a title, and we're going to remember that. And losing to MJF made sense. We move forward. I thought this was executed terrific.
Yeah, in terms of the title reign, so the match was executed extremely well. In terms of the title reign, I've said this before, loved the concept, did not love the execution. Meaning, if he had 4 defenses against deserving challengers with little mini stories built up, fantastic. He had like 7 or 8 defenses. People would literally, one week after another, I won a title match. Okay. Didn't deserve it. Lost a ton of matches ahead of time. Other people, Swerve Strickland, Kenny Omega, who are hotly going after the title in the preceding months, didn't even try. The main eventers knew this guy was giving out title matches, and none of them tried to get a title match. If you're Bobby Lashley, you see this scrawny little kid, giving out a championship match. You're not challenging him. So I loved the concept of it. And I think if you had pulled out the bullshit title matches and left the quality ones in terms of the ones that made sense with his character and given them an extra week of backstory between each one, to me, that works a lot better than this guy just fighting a ton, because still in 4 matches, he can get injured, tired, show that he's gone above and beyond. You still get the same result without the lack of logic for all of these people suddenly having an opportunity at the AEW championship, which was being treated like a TV title for the last month and a half. That's the problem I had with it. But again, doesn't mean I didn't enjoy it. Doesn't mean I didn't think it was conceptually strong. It was just the execution of it I did not particularly love. Here's a question I have for you about this match. I don't have a problem with it. Let me state that, but I want to know how you feel. So go back to Roman Reigns, CM Punk at WrestleMania. Okay. Roman picks up the steel steps, nails Punk in the head with them while he's like leaning over the ropes or trapped in the ropes, whatever the situation was. It's a federal case. People are going crazy. In this match, they did a pile driver into upturned steel steps. They did the big spot off the scaffolding through a table. No count out. It was not a no count out match, not a no DQ match, etc. Did you have problems with those in comparison to the Punk Reigns spot that I'm talking about?
No, because those aren't normally DQs, right? We talked about that at the time. You can throw somebody onto the stairs. You can throw somebody through a table. That's not a DQ.
I think it's so tough. If you're moving those, if you throw someone into the steps, not a DQ. If you push the top steps off and you do a move into the bottom steps, not a DQ. If you upturn the steps and then make a concerted effort to do something like that, it's borderline for me. The spot where I think there's a legitimate argument is them spending 4 minutes outside the ring, 5 minutes outside the ring, doing the spot on the scaffolding with a table. no count out, no DQ. I don't mind it because I don't remember, was John Cena Cody Rhodes 2 at SummerSlam? Was that no DQ, no holds barred or something? I don't believe it was, but
I'll look it up, but I know what you're saying.
If you remember that, they were out of the ring for like 10 minutes and everyone's like,
right.
What the hell's going on? I didn't have a problem with that. I didn't have a problem with the steel step spot in Reigns and Punk. But what I am going to say is if you did have a problem with either of those and you didn't have a problem with this, then you're not being consistent. That's really what I was trying to get at. I saw people criticizing this. For me, it's referee discretion. It's a world championship match at the end of a pay-per-view. You're allowed some leniency. If they brought out a kendo stick, a steel chair, did some of those things, I'd have a much greater problem with it.
Cody John Cena was a street fight.
It was a street fight. Okay, so that was no issue at all there. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. But no, I have no problem with the no count out stuff. That has always been referee discretion. Go back to the Attitude Era and see how many main events of shows were outside the ring for minutes at a time. So I had zero problem with that too. And it might have been Punk Roman as well, where the referees, where commentary was also making that same point about discretion. I mean, I have zero problem with the no count out stuff.
Yeah.
And with the DQ stuff, to me, if the rule has always been the way I understood it was doing a move onto something isn't a DQ, hitting somebody with something is the DQ. It's basic, but that's always been my understanding, and that followed through here.
I think you can make that claim for the steel steps. I don't think you can make that claim for a table. If you bring out a table and do a spot into a table in a match that's not a no DQ, that's a DQ. I mean, it just is. Like if you're pulling it out of the ring, it's a weapon. You're setting something up. Like
I don't know. I feel like
let me clarify. That's in WWE. In AEW, the table spots is not a DQ. It has never been, because they take that from New Japan. Where New Japan, you can have a regular match, they pull a table out from under the ring, and it is what it is. So I'm clarifying. For them, it's not. I don't have a problem with any of it. I thought there was nothing. There was nothing that happened in that match to me that was illogical. I saw some people claiming otherwise. I had no issue with it. And that's why I gave it 4.5 stars. If there was lacking logic, that's where I start downgrading matches.
Yeah. Also, matches only like 23 minutes, like not overly long, not like a 35-minute deal. And I'll say that for this whole show, it was a long show like all AEW's shows are, but there wasn't, other than one, which was understandable, there wasn't like ungodly long matches on the show. And I thought that really helped the pacing of the show.
That's exactly what I was going to say later. Yeah, the pacing was fantastic. Nothing felt like it was overindulgent, except for one match, which we'll get to in a little bit. Now, after the bell here, as MJF was standing over Darby's body, Kevin Knight ran out, seemingly to stop him from doing anything crazy like continuing to attack Darby. After chasing MJF away, though, Knight appeared to climb to the top rope, like to yell at him or something, which you see all the time in wrestling. Instead, he had a frog splash onto Darby in the gurney. It was a heel turn that was surprising the way it transpired against Allen, as opposed to Speedball Mike Bailey, but not surprising, as it seemed obvious that it was coming over the last month plus. Hopefully, this gets linked somehow with Swerve Strickland. If you remember, he gave Kevin Knight that advice a couple months ago that he needs to be a savage, basically. It would be nice to see an alignment between them, an older guy helping a young gun, like up in the game. And now, my presumption is that Darby can take some time off and come back and be a strong TNT title challenger at All In. You have Knight against Allen. It's a little unfortunate that he's already jumped down 3 levels into like the mid of the mid card. But, you know, if you're going to run that angle at Double or Nothing to conclude the show, then it makes it a hot match for your biggest show of the year.
Yeah, and it fully moves us away from MJF, Darby Allin. We're all moving into different things
close
here.
The book on it.
And the splash on the stretcher is kind of a gnarly spot. Like Darby's like tied up. You know, he can only brace himself so much in that situation, and then Kevin Knight pushes it over as well.
I thought it was worse for Knight, actually, because if you're Darby, it at least has a little give, because those stretchers are made so that those wheels can bounce up and down, you know, whether it's rolling over some type of turf or into a vehicle. For Knight, I thought it was worse because he bounced off of it and then fell onto the ground.
Yeah. Well, both of them too, because Darby can't get his arms all the way up to fully help kind of brace
right,
it. But
sure.
yeah, we didn't want to overlook how devastating of a spot that was.
No, that was a great spot for sure. International Championship, Kazuchika Okada defending against Konosuke Takeshita. This was my main event. I've told you guys for months that I could not wait for this match to happen. I was extremely disappointed over the last couple of weeks that they basically just stopped building it, which was super unfortunate. However, AEW delivered one of its best video packages ever leading into this match, which was surprisingly second on the card. Tremendous counter sequence with signature and finisher avoidance that should have ended with a cradle tombstone and wheelbarrow German suplex, but instead included further offense due to no selling. Okada countered into Rainmaker over the top rope on the apron. That was a great spot. Don Callis got involved, trying to instruct the guys not to kill each other. Takeshita landed a superplex and then a crotch-lifting German suplex, but Okada countered a knee into a tombstone. Some extremely well-done false finishes. Takeshita reversed Rainmaker, no-sold a dropkick, and then hit a driving knee for a 1 count. But then he followed with Raging Fire, no hook of the leg for a squeaky clean 1-2-3. Excellent, excellent match between these two. I did not think it would be as definitive given the way the feud has gone, but Okada putting over Takeshita was a necessary passing of the torch moment because Konosuke is the heir apparent to his mantle, worldwide, I would even say. Something I noticed while watching the match is that they did not do that much bell to bell in theory that you wouldn't see in a WWE ring, but what separates the wrestling is the fighting spirit aspect, which is not for everyone, the crowd response to what may be considered relatively common moves, such as a superplex, and the stringing together of the moves. That's the huge differential. They're not letting things breathe. They're always going into the next one. That is why, though, the fan element that I talked about a moment ago, that's why they are so important to how matches are perceived. There were, mediocre to above average matches on Saturday night's main event that crowd enhanced to a significant degree. And this crowd at Louis Armstrong Stadium was just as good, if not even better. We talked about that crowd in, Fort Wayne, Indiana, being one of the best crowds of the year in America. This is right up there, if not better. Like 2 nights in a row, we got 2 incredible crowds. They took this match from something that was probably borderline high A to A+, and for me, they made it a no-brainer A+ match and the clear match of the night. It was a top 5 match of the year to this point, maybe top 3. Excellent bell to bell, like I said. I'm back and forth between the full 5 stars and the 4.75. The fact that Takeshita countered every Rainmaker until he actually hit Rainmaker on Okada, to me, that was the best part, but it was only one part. I'm going to rewatch this. I will give you a final numerical grade on Thursday. But either way, this was an A+ match of the night, one of the best matches of the year.
Yeah, very good between 2 guys could do that. The passing of the torch, like you said, very much that New Japan type of style in terms of, especially with the no selling, which I don't love as much, but I understand that is the way it is sometimes. The crowd got me even more into this than I would have otherwise for exactly that reason. Like I could look past that because the energy in this match was just out of control. For a championship, loved it. Like there's not much more to say that you didn't already say, but just fantastic wrestling as you would expect from these 2 guys. And Takeshita is continues to rise up to be one of those, best wrestler in the world type of guys.
So Callis family got contentious with one another after the bell. Well, 5 of the 25 of them who were in the ring. Kyle Fletcher, as bald as the day he was born, returned to a big pop and first stood beside Takeshita before going face-to-face with Okada. After the rest of Callis family ducked out of the ring, they hugged tight with Fletcher raising his arm, only to hit a relatively weak lariat in, I guess, a confirmation of a heel placement, considering he was already heel coming into this. Telegraphed from a mile away, still effective. He added a brainbuster for good measure before simultaneously grabbing the title with Okada. Okada let him have it, and that led to a belt shot. This went far longer than necessary this segment, especially considering the insane length of the show, but it was effective. Callis turning on Takeshita for Okada would not have made sense considering the age cap. If he was looking toward the future, he'd want to ride with Takeshita over Okada, especially considering he just won the International Championship. But if we learn this week that it was Callis choosing Fletcher over Takeshita, and for some reason he had to make that decision, it works. But also, if Fletcher's in the arena and he's going to come out and attack Takeshita or whatever, and we have seen time and again Callis family cheat with the screwdriver. It was such a huge part of how this feud got engulfed in flames. Okada using the screwdriver when it was meant for someone else, and so on and so forth. it feels like Callis probably should have been more involved with preventing Takeshita from winning the match and helping Okada, giving him the screwdriver. Like, it was weird that didn't come into play in the match, yet it was the entire post-match, them being angry and turning on Takeshita, who just won the title, when Callis' gimmick for so long has been that he wants all these guys to bring gold to the family. So they kept gold in the family, but by turning on him, he took it out of the family. So the logic here was a little bit off for me. And again, it lasted too long. It was not as good for me as the Kevin Knight turn, but it was an effective moment. The fans loved it. They went crazy for Fletcher, so that's cool.
Yeah, I'm good to see Kyle Fletcher. He's obviously the next thing here, potentially another all-in match as well.
Yeah, between them, for sure.
The Callis family is what it is. Like, it's kind of just a weird collection of guys, but focusing this on the top couple of guys made sense. It did go a little bit too long for me, like you said, but I understand wanting to have that Takeshita Okada match just stand on its own,
totally,
and not have interference and all that kind of stuff, and then do this afterward, even if it went a bit long.
Yeah, that's precisely why you do it that way. It's just maybe you save this for Dynamite on Wednesday as opposed to doing it on the pay-per-view. That's what I would have done. I would have let the title change sing. Think about it. There were 3 title changes on this show. 2 of them had post-match attacks. I like those title changes to sing. Now, the one at the main event made sense because it was so unique. But this one, they could have done this on Dynamite, done a celebration. Fletcher returns, all is well in the Don Callis family. And then they turn on Takeshita, and boom, you have a huge moment on TV, as opposed to something that will largely get forgotten about in the context of this pay-per-view. Tag Team Championship, FTR defending against Cope and Cage in an I Quit match. The tag team career of Cope and Cage together was on the line if they lost. This opened the show. Cope got serenaded at the end of his song as per usual, and the crowd was red hot at the opening bell. Christian used pliers to a nose and a crotch. Cope took a spike pile driver onto the announce table. Christian said, "I banged your mother," and "go F yourself," while getting his arm smacked with a steel chair while it was through a cinder block, which had zero effectiveness because, it's a cinder block. So the chair bent. Dax Harwood hurt his own hand, doing the move. And Christian's just like, oh, okay. FTR undid the top turnbuckle, dropping the top rope. Cage took Shatter Machine before FTR each took spears. Then Cope took Shatter Machine after Stokely punched him with a watch. So Beth came back, took him out, only to get thrown first faced into the steel steps by Dax. They were going to spear her off the apron through a flaming table, but she dodged and Stoke took the bump. So they didn't use Beth to try and get Cope to quit. They just wanted to attack a woman, I guess. Beth low blowed Dax, leading to him being put in a sharpshooter and a crossface simultaneously. Then she brought in Spike, which Cope just gently placed on Dax's forehead for a second before he quit, with the faces becoming the new champions. Now, I did not love this match, but as an opener, it was a banger. So I'll give them credit because the fans were crazy hyped for it. The Spike spot at the end, again, I mentioned earlier, the New York Athletic Commission would not allow them to blade, so he couldn't drag it across his head. But then don't use it. Just have him tap out to the 2 moves. It's plenty strong. You're in a double submission from 2 legendary wrestlers. You can tap without a weapon. It's okay. So that was my frustration there. It was smart to involve Beth so she could get her revenge on FTR. I feel like they missed an opportunity to use her to impact the faces, as I just said. But I guess that wasn't really the point of her appearance. It was revenge. It's cool that Edge and Christian are getting one more tag team title reign before retiring. It's their first in literally a quarter century, by the way.
Wow.
And as we discussed on the Ultimate Preview, this tag team division is only going to get stronger with New Day, Motor City Machine Gun, Shirley joining the company before All In. I anticipate that match being at least a 3-way with the Young Bucks, possibly a 5-teamer, maybe TLC, maybe Stadium Stampede of some kind, or, a match like that. I don't think they're going to use quote unquote TLC. This was the right way to start the show on a positive note, and there were a variety of quality spots. The wrestling portion for me, though, it was limited. 3.75 stars, B+.
I enjoyed this. And I think I like it more in hindsight, because as it was happening, I was like, well, here we go with another AW pay-per-view. We got a wrench twisting a nose. We've got some blood. We got a cinder block, a flaming table, nails to the head. I'm like, is this just going to be another one of these where we got people just goring themselves all night? And it didn't. This was ultimately the only, I believe, like hardcore type of match. And I think that really helped the show. that it wasn't everybody trying to out blood each other for various things. And in hindsight, it makes this match stand out even more than it did at the time. The energy was great. The excitement was there. The crowd was really into it. You knew who was going to win because of stipulation once again. But I really enjoyed this. And you can do these types of matches when they're not, 3 or 4 of them on the card. Mm-hmm. So I liked it.
Spacing this out from Stadium Stampede, exactly what they needed to do. Opener, closer, or a penultimate match on the show. Really well done. Continental Championship, Jon Moxley defending against Kyle O'Reilly. No time limit, despite the Continental Championship usually being a 20-minute time limit match. Jim Ross was on the call here for some reason. Due to the nature of the match, this was naturally slower and more methodical. O'Reilly worked the knee throughout, while Mox worked an ankle that led to Kyle struggling to execute offense in the latter stages when he remembered to sell it. There were the standard set of arm bars, knee bars, heel hooks, and ankle locks. Mox basically no-sold a stomp and hit a cutter, which was really dumb. Then they got into a slap fight on their knees and then exchanged blows on their feet. Mox ultimately caught Kyle in a heel hook with a grapevine, forcing the submission to retain his title. I had this at 19 minutes, so it was under the time limit, and the stipulation did not come into play at all, which is exactly what I thought would happen on the Ultimate Preview. Mox and O'Reilly, they shook hands after the bell, and their groups were waiting in the corners, but nothing else happened. I enjoyed this. It definitely reached a crescendo in the latter stages, even if it was largely a submission and mat-based match. Your level of entertainment here was based on your appreciation for this style of wrestling. I generally like it, but I didn't feel like they executed it that well. I'm at 3.75 stars B+. It never reached the next level. There was never a moment where O'Reilly winning felt possible. There was an overall lack of urgency, which, guess what, would have been felt if they did not remove the time limit. Considering it came in at like 18:45 and the whole gimmick is 20 minutes, if O'Reilly was trying to avoid submission while the clock was simultaneously ticking down, then you would have something there. But look, Mox put him over previously, so losing here was fine. I personally would have preferred this being the third meeting with the time limit, not the fourth, after they did a completely unnecessary draw on television. They do have great chemistry together. They are fight forever type of opponents in this style. And my only other note is that JR badly needs to stop doing commentary. Find another role for him. Let him be an interviewer or something. He didn't know the story. He called Mox the new champion at the end. That is unforgivable.
Yeah, it's the kind of match where, like, this would have been a good place to do the draw. Like you said, if they hadn't done so much of what they've done already, if you're going to go no time limit, you got to go a long match, and you're probably better off doing that on TV, just because of the nature of how long these cards are. And this was always going to be a mid-card type of thing. Make this the main event of a Collision or something like that. Because I was thinking, like, oh, this would have been a good place to have that urgency, like you said. But ultimately, it was fine. It was what it was. They told the story throughout, a bit slower, but I think it stands out sometimes on an AEW show to do that. It could have made this a submission match or something too, but it was fine.
Yeah, I would have loved, actually, rather than no time limit, submission only. And that would have been pretty interesting. Women's Championship, Thekla defending against Jamie Hayter, Hikaru Shida, and Chris Statlander. Thekla splashed the other three ringside after a bunch of choreographed multi-woman spots between the ropes. Stat bit her fingers. Thekla came back with her spider suplex out of the corner. Someone finally attacked Thekla in her spider stance, which was stupid to do in a four-way. Unfortunately, after Stat picked her up and she was going to pay for it, Hayter interfered, and she didn't pay for it at all. Shida accidentally took Stat's head off with a knee as she was aiming for Hayter. Jamie did land Haterade for a broken fall. Stat and Shida brawled with the latter, hitting the former with a kendo stick after Sunday Night Fever on the champion. Shida and Hayter then took each other down ringside, with Thekla retaining via a stomp, pinning Stat for, I believe, the fourth time, as one of their matches was 2 out of 3 falls. Well done by all four women. There was no storyline going in, as this was completely thrown together randomly with women whom Thekla had already defeated, but it still delivered quality wrestling. The finish was a bit of an eye roll, even if we all knew Thekla was retaining no matter what. The whole Stat Shida storyline does continue out of this, so that's a positive, but to me, it's been rather uninteresting to this point. At least there was some development. Hayter was a step above everyone else in this match, as she always has been. 3.75 stars, B+ again.
Yeah, solid match. Thekla just continues to just feel like a star. and just on another level from a lot of the women in the division, just in terms of her presence, her aura, as the kids would say, the charisma. She's awesome. And the match was wrestled well by all these people as you expected that it would. Not much women's wrestling on an AEW show, which is, kind of normal, but they got talent there and they put on a pretty good match. Got close to, I think, the ceiling of what we would have thought it would be.
Yeah, this was the ceiling of what I thought it would be. 100%. Stadium Stampede, Jericho, Hurt Syndicate, Jack Perry, and the Elite against the Demand, the Dogs, Andrade Idolo, and Mark Davis. This was the penultimate match, as I mentioned before. There were some team video packages leading into this, at which point I was reminded that Kenny Omega was in the match, considering he had not been part of the build on TV at all. He did have a funny bit in the video, choking on a cigar. They were parodying Snatch, I want to say the intro to that film. But that would have been a better fit for All In London rather than a show in New York. Vintage, have you seen Snatch?
No, I'm looking this up. I've probably seen clips.
Yeah.
But this is one I'm not as familiar with. No.
I'm not giving you criticism on this one, but it is a movie that is quite good, is what I will say. A song did not play at the Bell, which is probably reserved for Anarchy in the Arena. Even though this was a stadium, it felt like an arena. The faces all wore suits, and the match format seemed to be, at least for the first half, anywhere from 8 to 12 guys hanging out ringside and then 2 to 6 in the ring taking turns wrestling. It was heavily planned out. Toa Leona did a triple stack Samoan drop of the Young Bucks, which was cool. Ricochet did an Escalera shooting star press into a pile. Shelton Benjamin did a Tope Con Hero into a pile, which was awesome, given his age. Jericho dove into the pile too. Jericho and the Elite did a Founding Fathers pose in the middle of the match. Commentary failed to recognize that Perry used a bag of flour as a weapon. They couldn't figure out what this substance was. It was so weird. Finally, people moved elsewhere in the stadium. Bobby Lashley was down backstage when Leo Rush and his gremlin character showed up, scared him, and got involved. Luchasaurus showed up in a wig when Andrade took a fan picture with the women, misted him in the face, something that I don't believe was part of his gimmick, or if it was, he hasn't used it in years. Jericho poured out tennis balls and somehow only suplexed Ricochet into 2 of them. But Jericho did take a Death Valley driver into a handful of them. Satnam Singh called for a food fight in catering randomly. Clark Connors took a super kick while being wheeled down the ramp in a shopping cart with a trash can around his body. Connors then speared Lashley, which was the height of absurdity. Jericho backstage opened a door where Luther stood with a huge tennis racket. Davis randomly walked into the parking lot for no reason, then randomly found a note with a knife on a golf cart as Perry was randomly in his bus, prepared to murder him, and I presume go to jail for vehicular manslaughter. Commentary screamed that Davis was in the golf cart and now dead, except anyone with eyes who watched the spot saw he was nowhere to be found, and he had a good 15-20 seconds to avoid a bus barreling down towards him. And then we see him ringside a moment later. This is why Tony Schiavone sucks. Finally, after all of this, we got some great wrestling. Omega and Andrade had about a minute together. There were a half dozen spots into tables, with Omega putting Andrade through one using a one-winged angel, which was the easy highlight of the entire match. Jericho then put himself through a table as a tribute to Sabu. There was no opponent in the vicinity, and he no-sold the bump. As far as I could tell, this deep into the match, there was only 1 or 2 pinfall attempts. Ricochet was left alone in the ring. He took everyone's signatures and finishers. And I'm like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. Ricochet is going to take the fall. He's the one everyone hates, and it's going to be a huge pop. But for some reason, they protected him from it. Bishop Khan pushed him away as Jericho tried Judas Effect. He took a 7-way super kick, and then Jericho had a lion salt on that guy to end it. I presume so Jericho still gets to fight Ricochet one-on-one again despite all of this. Look, there was nothing wrong with this match. It was fun, lots of chaos, some spots that took a lot of talent to execute, a couple moments that made me smile, some mini surprises that mostly featured low-card talent I didn't care much about. But as a match, for grading purposes, it came across as chaos for chaos' sake. And it was not until the table spots leading into the finish that it had my attention at all. Omega and Andrade were the stars when they had the opportunity to wrestle, but Leona was probably the MVP overall, Toa Leona. And considering the teams were random amalgamations of people, with the only real feud being Jericho and Ricochet, I didn't find myself caring much about it, especially since the babyfaces winning was blatantly obvious from the second the match was made. I'll say 3.5 stars B. I was lower than that number for a long time until some of the closing sequences. I know people are going to be way higher on this. They're going to call it an A. Some may even go crazy, and that's fine. But this was not a well-composed match like either of the TLC tag team matches WWE did last year. I'm using those as a comparison because there's a lot of outside the ring stuff, a lot of tables, a lot of chaos. This was just a bunch of spots and a lot of tongue-in-cheek stuff. And for me, it didn't hit like it probably did for some others.
I don't think anybody's giving this an A.
Dude,
for the record.
Now you want to go look at the cage match rating right now? But go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, do it. Actually, I just like it's
a 4.5 equivalent on cage match right now, a whole point higher than I am. So that's what I'm saying.
There have been obvious diminishing returns with all of these since the original first Stadium Stampede, which was awesome and creative and fun and had Urban Meyer, I think, and all that stuff. You can only do that so many times, and this was 7-on-7, which I feel like that's the biggest one they've done. I can't tell. It jumped out to me how many people there were here. A lot of people I just am not as familiar with. I'm glad it wasn't like 45 minutes either. It was like 31 minutes. So it wasn't like too long.
Dude, it felt like an hour.
But I was also
this felt like a freaking hour.
But I was like, I want to get to the main event now. It was like late at night. Part of me just says, like, don't even have this on the show. Just get rid of it. The other part of me says, well, Bobby Lashley, the Bucks, Omega, Ricochet, like there's people here, Andrade, who you want on this show. And so this is a way to do it. But I think I would have not done this stipulation, done fewer people, done some sort of tag, whatever, and maybe gone like 20 minutes. I think it was just too much. It was so many people, too many people to really keep track of. There weren't that many. They've kind of run out of spots to do. They've done the bus crashes into a thing before, like they've done a lot of these things. I don't know how much farther you can really take it. Like I'd probably give this like a C. It was ultimately like okay, and I have some fun with it, but each one is worse than the last one. And I just don't know really how much more you can do this. Honestly, the highlight to me was the intro video, which was kind of funny.
Yeah, it was cool.
Especially Kenny Omega coughing on the cigar and stuff like that. I also didn't understand why Jericho and the Faces were dressed the way they were. Like, why is the Hurt Syndicate in dress clothes for a wrestling match?
I think it was playing off the video package, and so that's what they went with. Ricochet and the Demand are in baseball jerseys. They're in a tennis stadium. It would have been funny if they were actually in tennis gear, like white shorts and white tops.
Have them all in polo shirts,
yeah,
shorts or something like that. Yeah. Nobody like dressed alike. It was just kind of a real amalgamation of a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
a couple of things could have made it a little bit better, but I also think the ceiling on these have long peaked.
That was the match booking, though. The people involved were thrown together, very thin reasoning. Oh, by the way, I was on the phone. These people are going to fight also. They never really mentioned it on TV. And they did a bunch of random matches. I mean, there was, I say this all the time, okay? People criticize AEW. They say AEW doesn't do stories. That's not true. AEW does do stories. It's just much more limited and usually reserved for a couple key feuds as opposed to the rest of their shows. And when they do stories for let's say the top 25% of their feuds and matches have stories. Okay. Like full-fledged.
MJF Darby, by the way, great story, great video package.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. Like the extremes of this are MJF and Darby Allin, which had a full-fledged deep story. You can call it silly with the hair and whatever, but they have a long-standing relationship. There were a lot of ins and outs of it, whatever. And then the women's championship match, which was literally just 4 people put in a match. None of them deserved it. They just wanted to get the women's title on the show. Those are the extremes. So you have 25% that are full story. And you can argue about whether they're good or not, but they have story. You have 25% that have no story whatsoever. And then you have the middle 50%, which is some combination of bad story, good story that's not told well enough, or a creation of a match with a reason given after the fact that is extremely loose and it's an excuse just to do it. That's where the legitimate criticism of AEW lies. It's that middle portion. And this match was an example of it because you had a story with Jericho and the Demand. Then you involved Hurt Syndicate randomly. They lost. They stayed involved. Then you have Jack Perry, who had a match, who was just randomly defending the TNT title against members of the Don Callis family. He didn't even care who they were. Mark Davis beat him for the title. So now they're feuding. Andrade just got thrown into the match. The Dogs just got thrown into the match. And then because Perry was in the match, he, on behalf of Jericho, called the Elite. And they go, well, even though we have been feuding with Jericho and all of his factions since the start of AEW, we're all babyfaces now, so we'll just join this match too. Because we don't like the Dogs or something like that. This is what I'm talking about when I criticize their storytelling. If, to your point, this was Jericho and the Elite, and he recruited them to join his side. And then it was the Demand and Andrade, who they paid Don Callis specifically for his services because they needed a fourth. And it was a 4-on-4 street fight. To me, that match is way more exciting and better from a storytelling perspective than it is throwing 14 people in a match like this. That's just how
completely agree.
That's just how I do.
Sure, fewer people, tighten it up.
Deeper storyline.
A little bit shorter.
Exactly.
Yeah, would have been better.
That's all I'm saying. So we had Will Ospreay against Samoa Joe, the first of 3 Owen Hart tournament quarterfinal matches on this show. You've already heard my criticism about that, but we'll just talk about the matches today. Ospreay hit a springboard cutter on Joe as he posed in the ring, but Joe quickly leveled him back after taking some boot scrapes to the face. Fun start. Commentary told more story during this match than we actually got on TV, as they never mentioned during their promos Joe being angry that the Ops had Ospreay's back previously, and they felt that if he needed some help, they should have come to them. He didn't even say any of that other than, hey, Will, we're an option instead of Death Riders. You should choose us. And then he just didn't, and Samoa Joe was pissed about that. Will hit a 450 and then did a Suzuki special into nothing, so Joe threw him backwards into the barricade. Joe later did his fun avoidance spot on a springboard, moving into a Boston Crab and a crossface. Ospreay came back with the Styles Clash, which was incredibly impressive given Joe's size, and it was also a nice callback to Joe's prior feuds with AJ Styles. He followed with Hidden Blade, and the referee literally stopped counting at 2. He didn't even raise his arm for a 3. He was waiting for Joe to kick out. Horrific job by him. Joe came back with power moves and his corner Uranagi into a coquina clutch for 2 arm drops. Will grabbed the bottom rope on the third, which was odd because he couldn't reach it seconds earlier, but at least they did the right submission spot. So congratulations to them for that. Ospreay flipped out of the Muscle Buster and hit Hidden Blade for a ridiculous 1 count, then landed a second one to win. Joe bowed to Ospreay after the bell. This match was my shit, okay? The size differential and clash of styles, along with their incredible ability, it allowed something simple without any real immediate stakes to sing. The no-sell of the Hidden Blade was totally unnecessary. Some of the spots were a bit frustrating, but this was a no doubt A match. I'm at 4.5 stars. I have no qualms if you're a quarter star lower on it. What frustrated me most had nothing to do with this match, but the tournament bracket. It is ridiculous that Ospreay and Joe fought here, and the winner now has to fight Jack Perry or Mark Davis. Those should have been first round opponents, and this should have been the semifinal match on the pay-per-view. It's like they don't bother to seed the field or take those things into consideration, which is super silly. But clearly, I loved the wrestling we got from these two guys.
Yeah, the match was awesome. Like you said, this is my stuff too, guys really hitting each other hard too. The worst part of this was that it was an Owen Cup quarterfinal. It makes it feel less of a big deal because we're throwing that. Not only are we throwing a tournament on there, but we're throwing a quarterfinal on there. I would have preferred no tournament thing on this, or like you said, maybe do a semifinal. So it feels a little bit bigger, like we're one step away from the thing. But I hate doing tournament matches that are not the final on a pay-per-view.
Unless you're going to do the whole tournament, like Classic King of the Ring. If you're going to do all of it outside of opening matches, sure. But this is an 8-man tournament. You're doing first round matches on a pay-per-view.
Yes, I really, really hate that. That took away the stakes to me coming in, especially because the Owen Hart Cup is what it is. But the match itself between these two guys was awesome. Glad we got it. And as someone who has checked in on AEW every once in a while, I had not noticed somehow that Will Ospreay now has a tattoo sleeve
Yeah.
I knew he had the dark hair when he came back. I guess I just didn't really notice the tattoos. He has gone so far away from his look, and it just surprises me for like the guy who may be like crowned as new face of the company this summer. He looks more generic than ever.
Yeah, but he kind of looked like a Muppet though. I mean, he had to change it. I don't think this was the right change to make, but he did have to go away from his prior look, in my opinion.
He looked like a Muppet, but there aren't many guys who look like Muppets out there in pro wrestling. He looks like a lot of regular wrestlers now. And I think that makes him feel less unique is all. Still very surprised by it, but this is what we're going with. You ain't getting those tattoos removed, but good match.
You're not. Bandito fought Swerve Strickland, another Owen quarterfinal. Bandito did a nice cannonball off the apron into Swerve, who was sitting in a chair. Swerve avoided him, charging for a header into the middle turnbuckle and then a German suplex into the top turnbuckle. Bandito came back with a Tornillo, German, and surprisingly mediocre frog splash. The no doubt spot of the match was a house call with Swerve standing on Bandito's shoulders from a pop-up move. It was the best spot through the first 5 to 6 matches on the show. And now that I'm saying this and I've watched the entire show, it was the best spot on the entire program. He followed with a Swerve stomp for a false finish. Bandito answered with a poison rana off the apron ringside, which was legitimately scary, but perfectly executed. Then he hit a deadlift 21 plex, which somehow did not end the match, and Bandito sold an injury trying to execute the move. Swerve next stopped the 21 plex and countered that into a vertebreaker, which was an awesome counter. He added house call for the 1-2-3. I gotta tell you, halfway through this match, the midpoint, I was extremely disappointed. And then it was like a switch flipped, and they just decided to go balls to the wall for the duration. Bandito got a nice excused loss, as not only did they create the injury, but the final moves from Swerve directly attacked it. I maintain that he should be getting an ROH title match on the back end, considering he just beat the champion. And look, you know the rules. All you have to do is ask Becky Lynch.
You beat the champion to be able to beat the champion. That doesn't make any sense.
Swerve was the right winner, as we discussed on the Ultimate Preview, though I'm not in love with a potential Brody King rematch in the next round. Grade for this match is tough because it was a tale of two bouts. I'm at 4.25 stars A because compared to Ospreay and Joe, it was more about a couple great late sequences as opposed to a great composed match overall. The final 5 minutes were, you could argue, the best 5 minutes on the entire show, but it was only 1/3 of the match. So it's still top tier, just more about the highlights than anything else. And that is how I split the difference between this and Ospreay and Joe.
Yeah, it could have shaved a couple of minutes off this, I think, but some crazy spots in the back half of the match, like you said. The right winner, as expected. Good, solid match that, again, didn't take up too much time. Maybe a little bit long, but not like crazy long.
And lastly, Mina Shirakawa against Athena in another Owen quarterfinal. This was third on the show. Tough ask to follow the openers. Athena hit a great shotgun dropkick into the LED barricade, then threw Mina off her shoulders to the canvas with disgust. She is really, really good. Shirakawa hit a tornado DDT and then did like a gator chomp for some reason before a slingshot tornado that was a bit messy. Not as messy as a few moves that followed. One of them, I can't even describe what it was. Athena did a great lifting curb stomp and did well selling a worked knee all match. Mina blocked O-Face and got a near fall on a seatbelt, but Athena eventually hit O-Face to get the win. This exceeded expectations, which is not entirely surprising considering Mina is talented, and Athena, I actually believe she's one of the best women's wrestlers in the world right now, which is why it's so frustrating that she's stashed away on Ring of Honor. This might have hit the A range if it was not for some sloppiness, if it had more time, if it had any semblance of a storyline coming in. But I was a big fan of what they did here, particularly from Athena's side. 3.5 stars B. You know, you could be a little bit higher, you could be a little bit lower, and I would accept that.
Yeah, it was fine. Like this was clearly the come down match after the two openers. But they did good work. Athena continues to be great. I like the gimmick of the forever champion in Ring of Honor, but like I don't watch Ring of Honor, so I can only see it kind of so much. It does feel like are they not wasting her, but could they be doing more with her? I don't know. But,
she has her own reasons that why she's over there, and
she
basically
she runs a wrestling company here in Texas,
does.
I think, too.
Yeah, and so she has her reasons why that's the case. But if you're AEW, and especially with Mercedes Moné and Tony Storm out, I mean, the women's division is struggling to a degree right now. I mean, they don't even have storylines for some of their stuff. I mean, Athena is someone who should be featured. And coming out of this match with Willow Nightingale injured because she relinquished the TBS championship, had to leave the tournament, I came out of this believing Athena is going to ultimately win the Owen, especially now that Willow is out. Unless the wild card is Mercedes Moné or something like that, that would be the only reason to not go with Athena. And I believe it's a wild card because it's going to be a name. If it wasn't, they would just pick another woman and throw them in that spot. So maybe Mercedes Moné does return here, but obviously it depends on her schedule. The other thing I will note, you alluded to it earlier. Look, 2 of the 3 shortest matches on the whole card were the women's matches. Let's just not beat around the bush. This was 10 plus minutes. It was 3 minutes shorter than the next shortest match. The 4-way was 7 seconds shorter than Ospreay and Joe. And that's how close it was. Otherwise, they were by far the shortest matches on the entire card. But pacing wise, I didn't have an issue with it. It's just like you go 20 minutes, 10, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 15 minutes. Like, it's very clear the way they see women's wrestling. It remains unfortunate to me. Although this match shouldn't have gotten a lot of time because there really weren't that many stakes on it. And the other match shouldn't have gotten a lot of time because there was no real storyline going into it. But again, that's the fault of the booking, not the fault of the pay-per-view format.
Yeah.
So that wraps up the full results with grades and analysis of AEW Double or Nothing. It is time for us to move into the grade portion of our show. Now on the AEW Double or Nothing Ultimate Preview, Silver King gave a pre-show expectation grade. Vintage did not, since he was not part of that show. So we will start with my expectation grade and then hear his final grade first, as we normally do in this part of the instant analysis. My pre-show expectation grade was a 90 A-. I felt the card was extremely strong. Obviously, I mentioned some of the lacking booking and storytelling coming in, but nevertheless, to me, this was one of the better composed AEW cards from a talent standpoint, from an excitement level to see some of the matches, the in-ring product. Vintage, as always, you have the opportunity to go first and give your final grade. What do you grade AEW Double or Nothing 2026?
A-, high A-, like a 92.
Mm-hmm.
I think this was one of the best AEW shows they've ever done. Like there was not really a weak point. The lowest point is probably Stadium Stampede, which is still at least kind of fun. Nothing felt like it dragged on too long. Nothing felt like it was a waste of time. There was a varied styles of matches across this card. A lot of different types of matches, either stipulations or just in terms of the guys fighting, like Will Ospreay, Samoa Joe, like you said. And we got 3 title changes, right? 3, I think.
3 title
2
changes.
or 3. So we got 3 title changes, including the main event, which always is a boost in my book. So yeah, A-. I thought this was a really good show. I went into it, especially after the first match, thinking I was going to dread how long and violent this was going to be. And instead, they put together a really well-built, well-paced, fun, different kind of show. I loved it.
Yeah, the fact that it ended around, I think, was it like 12:15 Eastern? Because I was late on the show. Am I correct about that? Around 12:15?
I don't know exactly because I'm Central Time, and it's whatever time.
Well,
11:15
for you. 11:15 for you is what I'm saying. It sounds like so. The fact that it ended around that time, it was not a gory mess. There were not a ton of blade spots because they couldn't do it, and exaggerated hardcore stuff in the majority of matches as opposed to a minority of matches. That helped this card so much. And the question is going to be whether AEW realized that and Tony Khan realized that, or he just said, well, those were the circumstances of this show, but for our other shows, all bets are off and we're just going to go crazy like we normally do. That to me helped the enjoyment level of Double or Nothing so much. Now, let me start with not even a criticism, a suggestion. For a show that aired on a Sunday during a holiday weekend, especially going up against the Western Conference Finals, and that game between the Oklahoma City Thunder and San Antonio Spurs started at 8:30, so 30 minutes into this. It truly would have benefited AEW, in my opinion, starting the show at 6 p.m. It would have ended around 10:15 p.m., and no one would have complained about show length when something finishes before 11. I don't understand why they felt the need to start at 8 p.m., knowing how long it was going to go and given the competition and circumstances. It seems like an unforced error when there's a really easy way to curb criticism over length. I don't like when WWE starts their shows at 6 p.m. because they're not long enough to necessitate that. But AEW shows are. And again, Sunday, holiday weekend, every reason in the world to do that. However, this was a great show. Easily the pay-per-view of 2026 for me, 5 months into the year. Nothing else has come close to this. It's also one of my favorite AEW pay-per-views of all time. And as you all know, I am not in the group that after every AEW pay-per-view calls it the greatest one ever, which is a significant portion of the audience. This was probably among the top 3 or 4 they have ever put on. The throwaway women's booking was a down point. The Stadium Stampede was thrown together. The booking was quite predictable. Those are my 3 main criticisms. But on the predictability part, sometimes predictable is good, and sometimes predictable is necessary. In this case, it was not only good, it was also necessary. The pacing was much better. The match quality was incredibly consistent. The right people won titles for the stories they are telling. The set looked good. The crowd was tremendous for the entire show despite its length. I'm even higher than you are. I mean, I started at a 90A minus as my expectation. I'm at a 94A. I might even be selling it short. I maybe should be at a 95A. That's the ceiling, though. To have a perfect show, it's almost impossible. I'm putting this along the lines of one of the, some of the best pay-per-views and premium live events that we've ever judged through 6-7 years of this podcast. So, I mean, kudos to AEW. Like I said, the composition of the show, the match quality, the storytelling in some of the key matches, they just really, really nailed the show. And this should be a template for what they do going forward. It is not my expectation that every AEW pay-per-view is like this. It's not possible, especially when you get into some of the unique shows like Forbidden Door and things like that. And really, every AEW pay-per-view should not be like this. I don't think you could actually do that despite the company's slogan and despite what fans think of the promotion. But if you hit the tentpole shows and you deliver them like this, Revolution, Double or Nothing, and All In specifically, then you are rolling exactly the way you need to be rolling. So kudos to AEW. Thought they nailed it. Vintage, any final thoughts here before we kind of close this out?
Yeah, no, I probably would have been A if it had been a little bit shorter, for the things we said. It was still long, but it didn't feel nearly as long as some of the others where they have, a 25-minute tag match and then an 8-minute women's match to follow, which is like kind of sometimes what it would feel like in the past.
Mm-hmm.
You could shave a couple of minutes off of maybe that stuff in the middle, change Stadium Stampede to something else, cut 5 minutes off it. But it's nitpicking. It was a really good show. I not every AEW show can be this, but I do think more AEW shows need to be like this in that there is a wide variety of styles of matches. There are too many times when there's like 3, hardcore equivalent matches, and they're all trying to outdo each other with the blood, and it just kills the show for me. So like you can do those things, just different styles and kinds of matches and all kinds of like there was one tag team match on the show, not counting Stadium Stampede because that was what it was, but like that was a lot of singles matches and it still worked. So I think there are pacing and structure things from this show that AEW should take moving forward. But I really liked it. Love the setup. Love the place it was. Good main event. Important show with the title changes. Like that's exactly the recipe I like in a wrestling show.
Yeah, and you know what? It's going to be extremely interesting. Not like to draw a direct comparison, but WWE this coming Sunday has one of its most loaded non-Big Four cards I can remember. And it's going to be really interesting to juxtapose not just the way the show comes off and how we review it, but also like the booking, the potential for title changes, so on and so forth, because they're a similar amount of time away from SummerSlam to what AEW is from All In. So I'm just extremely curious because there are such big matches. Cody Rhodes and Gunther, Roman Reigns and Jacob Fatu in Tribal Combat, Rhea Ripley and Jade Cargill. Becky Lynch is defending the Intercontinental title against Sol Ruka, Oba Femi, and Brock Lesnar. I mean, these are WrestleMania matches and rematches level in terms of what this card is. It's a 5-match card, and it's going to be really interesting to juxtapose, again, the way it's booked, whether title changes happen, and the perception in a similar amount of time away from a similar major show just a couple months from now in the summer. So that wraps up this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Schedule-wise, let me remind all of you, we'll be back on Tuesday with a full WWE episode, including the WWE Clash in Italy Ultimate Preview. We'll be back on Thursday talking NXT, AEW, and we'll do a AAA Noche de los Grandes preview because that show on Saturday was incredible. Vintage is going to watch it. He's going to be part of that. At least he said he's going to. He has a lot of college football commitments this coming week, but we're going to try to fit that in. So you should hear that on Thursday. And then next Sunday, we're going to have your WWE Clash in Italy instant analysis, where Silver King and perhaps Vintage as well will also analyze Noche de los Grandes. So a double analysis episode next Sunday, 7 episodes in 2 weeks. That is exactly what we do right here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. On the way out, since I did not mention it before, allow Silver King to first remind you here on the show,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well. For $5 a month, $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover, sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news analysis posts every week. Please sign up, support us, our performance enhancing audio. We give you extra content. And again, you're just keeping the lights on and allowing us to keep publish the show. Buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Also, remember to follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter and Blue Sky. You get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights. You can send in questions and comments for the show. On YouTube, you can listen to the show. You can watch full-length video interviews. Link in our profile. You can join up with our Slack channel. And, of course, sign up for the podcast at Getting Overcast on social media. And lastly, don't forget,
It's all about the 5.
head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Thank you so much to everyone for listening. Thanks to Vintage Cristianini for joining early Monday on a holiday to knock out this instant analysis for Vintage. This is the Silver King signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.